from Carleton University, and I am a senior fellow at the Norman Patterson School for International Affairs at Carleton University, the oldest institution in Canada. I have been following the Nile waters for the last 50 years, 50. And I did several presentations before 2013, 2014, that was my last visit to South Sudan. And the issue of Nile waters is a science, it's not politics. Politics plays a very small role in the issue of the Nile waters. So I have a presentation for you. It may take some time, but I always talk about the spider and the web. The spider without about Jonglei Canal. So we are going to widen agreements of other valleys. I will take you through why do we have a set or the torch. I will take you through the losses for South Sudan if anybody tampers with Bahr al-Ghazal Basin or the Sobat Basin. So this will be the crux. I will be talking probably for about 50 minutes or 55 minutes. And then we have got plenty of time for questions and answers. The presentation goes for about 50 slides, and I will go through them one by one. We have Bahr al-Jabal Basin, we have Bahr al-Ghazal Basin, and we have Sudan, Sobat Basin. All those are in South Sudan. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Lovely. Lovely. There are other basins not far from you, and that is the Blue Nile Basin, the Adbara Basin, Dinder Basin, and other smaller rivers like Rahat and Sitate. Historically, we have the 1929 agreement, which is called the Exchange of Notes between the UK and Egypt. It is the first 20th century agreement signed on the Nile waters. You will need to find all those agreements. I can help so that you can compile a complete file about the Nile waters and waters in general in South Sudan. At that time in 1929, Egypt had the right to 48 cubic meters of water annually. Sudan and South Sudan had the right to only 4 billion cubic meters annually. And that was after building Sinnar Dam. Sinnar Dam was completed in 1925, but the Egyptians refused for Sudan to store the water until 1929. And then the biggest problem came in 1959 when Sudan and Egypt decided that only the two of them are sharing all 100% of the Nile discharge. A very unfair agreement that Emperor Haile Selassie objected to, and at that time nobody had a clue about Nile waters in South Sudan. Of that, Egypt had the right over 55.5 billion cubic meters, and Sudan had the right, both North and South had the right over 18.5 billion cubic meters, and South Sudan made use of zero of that quantity of water. Evaporation was deemed to take 10 billion cubic meters, which was not correct. The Egyptians took Sudan for a ride in that agreement. The high dam became functional in 1963 with catastrophic consequences on the Nubians of northern Sudan. Who uses the water? Who uses the Nile waters? 98% of Egypt's agriculture is dependent on Nile waters. 15% of Sudan's agriculture is dependent on Nile waters, 100% in the north. Less than 1% of South Sudan agriculture is dependent on the Nile, and that's through the pumps here and there. 3% of Ethiopia's agriculture is dependent on Nile waters or other rivers. Why was Ethiopia so much disadvantaged? The World Bank in those days and other institutions blocked any funding unless Egypt gave its no objection. And Egypt was not willing to give a no objection on any project on the Nile. There was no regional backing for Ethiopia, especially from Sudan. Their hands were tied by the 1959 agreement. When we are talking about water, we are talking about two different sciences, exclusive two different sciences. There is nothing else. The first one is hydrology. And hydrology is the Q, the discharge, the quantity of water. That's a completely different science. And then we are talking about hydraulics. Hydraulics is the energy in the water, the head, the drop, the megawatt that we can produce as electricity, like from the Fula Rapids, and we will come to that later on. And even the Sobat, to everybody's surprise. Jungule Canal is not a standalone issue. We have got to understand, because when we are all together fighting for the rights of the people of South Sudan, we should not just concentrate on Jungule Canal. From where does this water come? Ethiopia produces between 80 and 86% of the Nile water, of which Sobat delivers 12 to 15 billion cubic meters of water. People have been underestimating Sobat River and its potential uses for South Sudan. It is time for all of us to wake up. So Ethiopia is not producing only the Blue Nile, it is also contributing to the Sobat, which produces about 15 billion cubic meters of water. The lakes region in South Sudan, the lakes region in Central Africa produces between 14 to 16% of the Nile discharge, in spite of the large discharge from Lake Victoria, but we'll come to that. We will analyze why Lake Victoria has got a lot of water, but only 15% is discharging into the Nile. Other sources here and there are contributing about 4%. Where does this missing water go? The large discharge from Lake Victoria, and once you leave South Sudan, the contribution is only about 14%. It goes to the Sud. And in the Sud, we have the Touch, and those of us who are pastoralists, we very well know the Touch, and we very well know what will happen if the Touch is no longer available. And now our fun starts. When you see the word Sudan, there is like a square. This is where the Sud is. Look at that. This is your water. All that is the water from South Sudan. This is a wealth overground, the same way you have oil underground, with one big difference. Oil is a non-renewable asset. The barrel of oil that you take out, that's it, it is gone. With water, the rain brings more water every year. So it is a renewable resource for South Sudan. Look at that. These are the permanent. This is permanent water all the year round. This is seasonal. When there are drains, all this area becomes the Sud. Even in May, these are still full of water. Look at that. Satellite imagery. All that is your water. All that. And look at what is inside the square. This is permanent. The catchment of the wetlands, which is the entire Sud, is estimated to be about 30,000 to 70,000 square kilometers. Different estimates and different times. It all depends on when you do the estimates. The actual flood reservoir is estimated as 30,000 square kilometers. This is permanently wet, permanently having water all the year round. And then there is another 40,000 square kilometers that are full of water during the rainy season. 14,000 square kilometers of that is seasonal with peak discharge around August. 16,000 of that is permanently flooded with water from Lake Victoria and other sources. The estimated quantity of water in the Sud is 30 billion cubic meters. That's 1/3 of the total discharge at the High Dam, which is 85 billion cubic meters of water. So the same way you have oil underground, you have that water which is yours. Nobody can contest it. Nobody can claim to it, but we will come to the legal implications later on. I want you to take a good look at this map. We don't have data here in Western Bahr al-Ghazal. These are the Western floodplains, and these are the Eastern floodplains, and this is the Nile and Sobat plains. This is pastoralist land. These are hills and mountains. Sometimes we have drought, sometimes we have famines in Eastern Equatoria. This is an ironstone plateau here. We can get very little out of that. But look at this. This is called the green belt. Why is it a green belt? I will come to that later on. This is Western Bahr al-Ghazal. This is Western Equatoria. And I hope among our colleagues and brothers and sisters, there are 1 or 2 people from Western Bahr al-Ghazal so that they listen to the analysis that we will give later on. And the connection of the Sud with this green belt in Western Bahr al-Ghazal. Now the question is, why do we have the Sud? What happens? This is a profile of the relevant heights of the Nile from Kagera out of Lake Albert, coming down to Asyut and the Delta in Egypt. In this area, between Malik and Melut and around Malakal, you see this dip. The Nile, the gradient of the earth has a dip. It is the only place it has a dip. This is where the Sud is. If that dip was not there, if it was a straight line, we are not going to have a Sud. So we need to understand, why do we have a Sud? Why does this water stay there and evaporates? All that water evaporates. In 1904, a British engineer concluded that about 10 billion cubic meters of water can be discharged from the Sud. However, that British engineer never said what will be the ramifications on the local population, which we will come to. This is another representation. This is the dry season, and this is the wet season when the square kilometers inundated with water were accurately measured, mostly by satellite imagery and hydrology calculations. So we have quite a bit of very solid scientific data on the Nile in South Sudan. This is another way. If you can see 14,000, about 14,000 in May, that is the square area full of water. And in January, it is about a little bit over 70,000 square kilometers are full of water. That's the mighty Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is the largest lake in Africa and the second largest freshwater lake in the world. It is just next to Lake Superior, which is in North America. That's again Lake Victoria. And you can see the amount of water in that area. Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, and South Sudan. So South Sudan is a source country. We contribute to the source and to the water of the Nile. Lake Victoria does not discharge directly in the Nile. It discharges in Lake Albert, and then from Lake Albert, we start the Nile around there. Look at that again. This is South Sudan. All that is the water, and all Bahr al-Ghazal basin generates and discharges in South Sudan. Which countries make up the Nile basin? Burundi. And Burundi was the first country among the Nile countries that said, if anybody wants our excess water, they have to pay for it. People laughed at them, but they were very serious. Democratic Republic of Congo, Egypt, Eritrea, but Eritrea did not want to sit anywhere where Ethiopia was sitting before they made the peace. But Eritrea discharges very limited, less than 1% of the Nile discharge. And then you have Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Sudan, South Sudan. What people tend to miss is that 90% of South Sudan falls within the Nile basin, the highest density along the Nile countries. And then we have Tanzania, and then we have Uganda. So there are a total of 11 countries. This is a map of Africa, and all this area is concerned with the Nile water. So the geographic spread is quite big. Who owns the water after 2011? The 1929 agreement between the Brits and the Egyptians was completely silent about the issue of the water. Although the British engineer studied the Sud and concluded that in 1904 and concluded that the water can be drained. 1959 talks about sharing any additional discharge from the projects of natural rises in Lake Victoria, 50% between Sudan and Egypt. So Sudan and Egypt did not assume that they owned the entire discharge in 1959, but they said, even in the future, if the discharge increases, that additional discharge, regardless where it is, goes only to Sudan and Egypt. This was really, was betrayal of the people in the source countries of the Nile. The 2005 CPA was silent about the stagnant water rights, and I was very heavily involved in that issue at that time. And Dr. John Garang was pressed very hard not to address this at all in the IGAD talks. So if you read the 260 pages of the CPA, you will hardly find any mention of the Nile waters. By default, the stagnant water belongs to the people of South Sudan. The Nile Basin Initiative. Canada is the father and mother of the Nile Basin Initiative. And it was built on the rights and benefits. The source countries have the rights, and they have got to be traded with benefits from the downstream. This is not happening now. All the rights lie in Ethiopia and the Lakes region, 100%. 100% of the rights, that's the discharge, the contributing rivers to the Nile, they lie within the Lakes region, of which Sudan is part, South Sudan is part, and Ethiopia. All the benefits are reaped by Egypt and North Sudan without compensation, 98%. Possible conflict? Yes, of course. People will wake up, people will be educated, people will talk to experts like myself, and they will know that, hey, the status quo is not an option, definitely. Can we trade rights with benefits? Yes, provided that they are equitable and provided that there is no cheating. The Egyptians cannot come and dredge CEO Busari and the Ur rivers, and they want to dredge the western swamps, and they want to dredge Lake Sobat, and all they give is a hospital or a dispensary or a diesel generator to a country or the other. That's not equitable. Those are not benefits. So we don't want the people of South Sudan to be taken for a ride, and I will come to that. Canada is the father and mother of the Nile Basin Initiative since 1992. And one day, I would like to host you, if you are interested, to talk particularly about the Nile Basin Initiative, how it was established, how it was promoted, and then how it was abruptly killed, primarily in 1988, and then later on by the Egyptians when they had a disagreement about Article 14B of the draft. I will come that to later on. Ndogo in Swahili means brotherhood. This was a project initiated by Boutros Ghali, if you remember him. He became Secretary General of the UN. He was an Egyptian diplomat of Coptic origin, and he was touring the Lakes region to forge brotherhood between Egypt and the Lakes region. And then in 1988, when we got all those floods and heaps of rain, and Lake Nasser was full to its maximum capacity of 170 billion cubic meters, Egypt dropped the Ndogo project like a hot potato. I started with point 3 so that you zero into it. Sobat can only be dammed in Ethiopia. What if South Sudan cannot or does not want to make use of the Nile waters? That's not the case. That's not the case. I mean, South Sudan needs to start thinking seriously about the Nile waters and the general water they have as an asset, not as a curse. Yes, there is malaria. Yes, there is water hyacinth, but there is water. The Sobat is made up of the Baro River, which originates in Ethiopia, and the Pibor River. And 2 to 3 billion cubic meters of water can be made available for mechanized irrigation. This is the only granary, possible granary of South Sudan. We can cultivate half the size of the Jazeera scheme. Half the size of the Jazeera scheme. And Sudan is 40 million people and South Sudan is 12 million people. And the only location in South Sudan for such a thing is the Sobat Valley. And I will come to that and I will tell you why. There is a very strange phenomena in that area. Sobat River can be dammed, or a dam can be put on it, and we can store 12 billion cubic meters of water. And we can generate about 250 megawatt hydro at a manageable cost within the absorption capacity of South Sudan. I am talking about the Eastern Bank. This electricity is enough to light the entire South Sudan on the Eastern Bank of the Nile. The problem is, Sobat can only have a dam in Ethiopia because you cannot build a dam in cotton soil, black soil. And all the Jungule plains are black soil. There are no mountains. There are no rocks. Even if you go deeper, there are no rocks. So this will have to be a joint project between South Sudan and Ethiopia. Let me tell you my own impression without any offense. Anyone messing with Bahr al-Ghazal or Sobat basins will be committing high treason for South Sudan, unequivocally. This should be taboo as the people's representatives. You need to rally all the forces so that hands off. Hands off. This is not an issue for one or two or people, regardless where their position is, to mess around with these two basins. They are the property of the people of South Sudan. Bahr al-Jabal itself can generate between 240 to 705 megawatts of hydro at full rapids, as you know, around Nimule. And there was a German study. I have a copy. It is in German, but somehow it did not go forward. There is a brief summary of it in English language. Maybe sometime in the future I can share a copy with Ambassador Gordon Boy, and he can share it with you. But it is interesting to look into that, to see that there is possibility for generating hydro along Bahr al-Jabal. This is a Sobat, and this is what the Egyptians want, because look at the zigzag and the loss in evaporation from that. And if you can just put a canal there and drain all that water, you will have more discharge from the Sobat. Look at the lush green. Wherever you go around the Sobat, there is greenery. This is a table that shows you the lengths of the river, the discharge area, the annual discharge, and the discharge per unit of 1,000 kilometers. And if you look at the Nile, the annual discharge is very small compared to other major rivers, only 84 billion cubic meters. Look at the Amazon. Look at the Congo. Look at the Zambezi. So from a discharge point of view, the Nile is really very miserable in total discharge. And one of the reasons, of course, is the total length of 6,850 from Kagera up to the Delta. It is close to 7,000 kilometers. This is the important part of this one is what part of the country falls within the Nile basin. And as you can see, Rwanda has a very large part that falls within the Nile basin. South Sudan, 79% of South Sudan falls within the Nile Valley, the highest along the valley. After Uganda, which is 98%, thanks to the lakes that are around Uganda in the lakes region. Bahr al-Ghazal Basin, CO, Busaris. Normally people forget about the CO, but there are two rivers that join just south of Wow, around Masnat Talib. So you have the CO, the Busari, which make the Jur. Then you have River Lul, Tonj, Ragab al-Zarga, Pongo, Geti, Get, Woko, Bahar Naam, and Kir. All that is 100% South Sudan. They originate in South Sudan, so nobody can have claim to them. There is a huge spillover from Bahr al-Jabal just north of Shambi. Those of you who went to Shambi before, I mean, Shambi gets inundated with water during the rainy season and then it subsides. But there is a huge spill from Bahr al-Jabal, and this is where they meet, and this is the target of Jongule 1. This is what the Egyptians want, because there is a linkage between the two swamps, and there is 6 billion cubic meters of water there that can be discharged in Jongule 1. So as you can see, Jongule is not a canal. Jongule is a project that can be damaging for the entire ecosystem in South Sudan. The estimated area of the basin, as we said, is about 17,000 square kilometers. And the total discharge from Bahr al-Ghazal is about 15.7 billion cubic meters, the same as Sobat. So between the two basins, we have 30 billion cubic meters of water that are completely owned and are discharged within South Sudan, or you're originating and discharging within South Sudan. East of the Jur, there are edges of wetlands here and there. Warap and lakes are pastoralist lands, as we all know. Dredging. The Egyptians, through a very mischievous agreement with two of the politicians, started dredging the Siyu and Busari and the Jur. So what does dredging do? What is positive and what is negative? What is positive is that it discharges more water into the main run of the river. What is negative is when that discharged water is not for the benefit of the people, not for the benefit of the nation, but for the benefit of another nation. That's what is negative. And it's a crime if the government of South Sudan allows dredging of the tributaries so that the discharge goes into the Nile and it goes up to the Delta. That's a crime in the rights of the people of South Sudan. Why Bahr al-Ghazal basin for dredging? Why didn't the dredging start anywhere else as Jungule Canal did before in the 80s, 70s and 80s? The reason is that this is an area that's not densely populated. Nobody's talking about it. Juba is not there. Malakal is not there. Bor is not there. So, you know, from where does the Siyu and the Busari come? If you ask 90% of the people, they never heard of the names. The impacts of dredging are everlasting. That's the problem with them. Once you dredge, that's it. The water flows and you lose it. Finished. The big question is, why the hurry? Is this really a priority now to start dredging, to talk about Jungule Canal, to bring in foreign contractors for the benefit of another country? What is the price? And why is the hurry? When South Sudan is riddled with problems, structural problems that need to be solved. Let me very quickly share with you a story. President Kiir went to Egypt during the days of Mubarak. My good friend, Dr. Barnaba Marial, was with him. He was Minister of Foreign Affairs at that time. And the Egyptians were pressuring President Kiir. He was annoyed by it. So Barnaba contacted me and he said, Taj, what do we do? And I said, let the president leave Egypt. He did. Without proper protocol, he took the plane and he went to Kenya.
Hello?
And I think this should be the attitude of everyone when there is pressure. Just don't talk about the subject, because right now, as we speak, South Sudan, yes.
Professor,
Yeah.
can we tell the rest of the participants on the Zoom meeting to mute? Because some of them are talking and they're interrupting.
You want the names of the participants?
No, I want them to mute their microphone, because it's picking some signal from them. They mute until you open the floor for question and answer.
I see. So can you hear me better now?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you better, but others have to mute. I think they already did, except for one or two.
Yeah, right.
The host can mute everyone. The host.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me.
Okay, so Professor, mute everyone.
Right. I will call very quickly. Let me call my my assistant, and she will do that for us.
Just carry on then.
All right. Okay. So he took the plane and he left. And when the Egyptians are looking south, they don't see people, they don't see land, they only see water. We have got to be careful about that. Now, I hope there is someone from our sisters and brothers listening or viewing from Western Equatoria. We never heard of a famine in Western Equatoria. We never heard of crops failing. When our people, the Dinka, were attacked in Bor by Dr. Mashar's forces at that time, they took their cattle all the way, they crossed the river, and they came to Western Bahr al-Ghazal. Why? Because there was pasture and there was water. The water and the rain and the prosperity in Western Equatoria is 100% attributed to the Sud. And the reason is water evaporates and then the northern winds come, they take the moist air and it drops it as rain in Western Bahr al-Ghazal and northern Uganda. So if the swamps are drained, Western Bahr al-Ghazal is not going to be as prosperous as it is now. And the Moro people do not deserve that, and other tribes. Now I am going to go very quickly about all the agreements that were signed on the Nile Basin. You need to get those. You can get them from the British Archives, which is close to the British Parliament in London. I have got those agreements. And when Brother Michael McQuay was Minister of Legal Affairs, and he and his Undersecretary didn't have a single copy, I did presentations for them on the Nile waters, and I gave Brother McQuay a copy of all these 11 agreements. So you need to know the legal framework, because these colonial agreements are still valid if you go to the Hague, if you go for international tribunals, you will need them, and I will come to that. So in 1891, there was an agreement Anglo-Italian, 1901, 1902, Anglo-Ethiopian, 1906, 1925, 1925, also Ethiopia with Lake Tana, and then 1929, Anglo-Egyptian on Sinnar Dam, 1933, Kenya, Italia, Somalia, 1959, all those are agreements that the Parliament needs to obtain, the Ministry of Water Resources and Agriculture needs to obtain and study very well just in case you need them. And in 1949, there was the Oil Falls Agreement as well. What are the currently non-Nile agreements that may or may not affect South Sudan? This is one, 1906. The agreements I'm talking about are not part of those 11. These are additional. 1952, Oil Falls, another one. Egypt and Ethiopia in 1993, a very strange agreement. There was nothing to share in the agreement, but they signed an agreement, really. They got together and they said, you know, we have to sign something. 1994, Victoria Fisheries. So I want you to, I will give you this later on, because I am recording this session and I am willing to share the recording with you later on. Once we polish it and so on, I can send it to Paul and you can put it in your archives. There are 20 something, I think 23 agreements that you will definitely need to get hold of and find the way to study it. Helsinki Rules on International Rivers. This was the starting legal, semi-legal framework. Then there is Angola, Botswana on the Okavango River in 1994. Central Africa, Chad Basin. I want you to take a lesson from Lake Chad. The size of Lake Chad today, the quantity of water in Lake Chad, is only 5% of what it was in 1964. 95% of Lake Chad disappeared and forever. So the fact that there is abundant water now, it is a safety valve against droughts. It is a safety valve against climate change. So the fact that there is water, it does not mean that we squander it. The Gambia, the Great Britain, and they go on. The last one is the Zambia. 23 agreements that I would strongly advise you through the Ministry of Water Resources or through Legal Affairs or through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to make sure that you are in South Sudan, not necessarily the parliament, is in possession of those agreements. Not the Zambezi because it is working very well. Not Chad Basin because Lake Chad has dried up, 95% of its water is gone. Niger Basin because it connects a number of countries and it is working very well. South Sudan is really blessed with the water. There was a document called the Water Plan for South Sudan. It was started in 2007, concluded in 2009. I had a very small part in it, I must admit. And then I hope you can get hold of it. I have a copy, but it is in Canada and it's quite large. So you need to, I hope it will be found. There was a cupboard in the Undersecretary's office where those agreements and studies done by the Japanese, done by myself and others were stored. So on page 26, there is talking about the transboundary nature of the Nile waters. In page 14, there is mention of the Kineti River in East Equatoria. Those of you who are old enough may remember the Kineti River hydro plant. It was a very small plant, but it was the only experience, and I don't think it is working now. And then in page 14, it goes, currently there is no hydropower station existing in South Sudan, which was correct. There have been plans to generate electricity at the Fula and at the Bedin Rapids, if those of you who know where the Bedin Rapids are. Those are the two areas other than Sobat if the dam is built in Ethiopia. Sobat is not even mentioned. In the literature of South Sudan, the hydraulics of South Sudan, hardly anybody talks about the potential of Sobat. Let me tell you where the potential lies. Sobat runs east to west. The Nile runs south to north. Between the two of them, there are the Jungule Plains, what we call Jungule Plains. If water is taken from the Sobat Valley, which runs east to west, the gradient of the land goes south instead of going north like the Nile. So you can do gravity irrigation like the Sudan Jazeera. You can do gravity irrigation from the Sobat. That's the beauty of the Sobat, but this calls for a study in the future. The document is called Water Policy of South Sudan. Page 16. It revealed that there is no single document which brings together existing policy and legislation relative to water resources management and utilization in South Sudan. And this is a serious issue that the government of South Sudan, regardless of the problems we have now, they need to look into it. In page 17 and 18, there is a list of 18 major challenges facing South Sudan. Not one has been addressed. So probably our sisters and brothers in the legislative system can dig out that document and see where are those challenges and how can we deal with them. In page 21, 22, and 23, there is a list of 19 bullets relating to what they called guiding principles for water resources management. None of them deals explicitly with the Nile waters. Just imagine, this is water policy of South Sudan, and the challenges that were listed, none of them talks about the Nile water. So we need to rethink. Bullet 327, to streamline institutional and legal frameworks relating to water resources management with clear separation of functions, roles, and responsibilities. My goodness, I contributed to that coining. And if I were you, and when I share a copy of the recording with you, a copy of this presentation will be with it. And I beg that you take a look at this part, to streamline institutional and legal frameworks relating to water resources management with clear separation of functions, roles, and responsibilities. Highlight capacity building project. There was a body called Joint Donor Team. That was a team of 6 donors in what we call the New Deal. It was $1.2 billion after the 2005 agreement that were given by 7 countries. One of them was the US, who did not want to team with anybody. The other 6 formed the team, and they pooled the money together, and they had projects in South Sudan. And I was talking to them. I did several presentations for them, and they were willing to undertake work so that we have got a good library about the Nile waters and about water. Page 26 of the same document. Government of South Sudan will need to undertake detailed assessment of its own needs and priorities. Development of the Nile waters, technical understanding of status and trends in the availability and use of the Nile waters due to lack of scientific research. There was some very good work that was done in that document if people were willing to read. Page 27 again, Government of South Sudan shall take all the necessary steps to establish a supporting legal and regulatory framework to enable efficient and effective functioning of newly established water resources management institutions in South Sudan. That has not been done. My comment on that disproved that such institutions still do not exist. The draft of the policy was developed in 2007 and was launched in 2009. Floods do not need canals. Basic statement, definite. If you have floods, you don't need canals. Flood needs dikes, not canals. No relationship. There is no relationship whatsoever between floods and canals. Dikes are designed through satellite imagery, identifying catchments, runoffs, and discharge. So this reconnaissance is done by satellite, and there are several companies. They will be commissioned on the area, they will zero into it, and they will give you the information for probably as little as $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000 per area. Floods are not rivers, they will change direction. So the flood that comes to town A might not come to town A. Next time it might come to town B. But there are means and ways of dealing with that. If there is a will, professional consulting and technical advice, funding, expertise, floods can be prevented and controlled through dikes. Very quickly, I want to take you through Hafirs because 40–50% probably of our folks in South Sudan are pastoralists. And a lot of fighting, a lot of conflict, if not fighting, happens in the Hafirs, probably around April, May, when the water in the Hafirs is drying up. A Hafir is a dam. It needs to be studied like a dam. It is constructed like a dam that has got no discharge. I built 130 Hafirs in South Sudan. It is a science. And if the Hafir is not properly built, it can cause more trouble than if it was not built alone at all. It can be useful for probably 20, 25 years, and it can be dredged. The mud in it can be removed. There are technical ways for doing that. We need a drag line to drag the Hafirs, so the normal caterpillar D7, D8, D9 cannot do the job because this is wet, it is wet soil. The capacity. South Sudan has been taken for a ride after independence and even during the transitional period. You cannot build a Hafir with a capacity. There is no point in building a Hafir with a capacity of 50,000 cubic meters of water. It wouldn't last. Once the pastoralists start coming to it, the water will dry out. So you need to talk about 200,000, 250,000 to 500,000 cubic meters of water capacity in the Hafir and a depth of at least 2 meters to reduce evaporation. If that's not done, if you don't have an expert in designing and building Hafirs, then it will not work. It will not do the purpose. Hafirs need to be aligned in series with the grassroots. In South Sudan and all the pastoralists, the people follow the cattle does not follow the people. And the cattle needs grass and water. So there could be a line. If people move from A to B, you might need 4 or 5 or 6 Hafirs because every day the cattle need to drink. So they go about 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers per day, and then they need to stop. All that needs to be taken into considerations. And we can build Hafirs for conflict mitigation. And Hafirs need to be managed by locals because once the Hafir is built, there is no way the Minister of Water Resources can put a team to manage it. We need to know what our rights are. Must participate in deciding what the benefits are. I mean, the benefits cannot be decided by another party. Egypt or Sudan cannot say, well, if you give us an extra 1 billion cubic meters, we are going to put a generation station or a hospital. No. The benefits, the same way that the water is everlasting, the benefits have got to be everlasting. Where does South Sudan lie in the clear division of Eastern Nile and Lakes Nile? I would advise you to revive the Nile Basin Initiative. This is the only body that we have now. It is very weak right now, but it's the only thing that we have. If anybody is serious about funding the huge dams in billions, we need to compensate the countries of rights with benefits, equitably with their rights and needs or new needs. 1959 does not give that. And nobody in South Sudan talked about the 18.5 billion cubic meters of water, which is the share of Sudan in 1959. What about South Sudan? Not a drop, not 1 cubic meter. What is the compensation for that? South Sudan went and Northern Sudan stayed and they took all the water. Dredging the major rivers of Bahar Naam, Siyu, and Busari, and so on. To what effect? You don't want to drain them. What does the 1959 agreement say about that? My recommendations to you, you need to study all the 9 agreements of the Nile. Study all the African Basins agreements, all 27 of them. That's what I have. There may be more, but those are what I have in my records. Beware of how and why colonial agreements are important for studying the International Joint Commission ruling on Badme. The International Court of Justice, ruled on Badme between Eritrea and Ethiopia based on colonial maps. So the colonial agreements are extremely important, and you can get all those from the archives of the British government. You need to start full research and study of international law on water, which is very weak right now, and it started with the Helsinki rules. You need to build a library, embark on serious capacity building for the legal and water cadre of South Sudan, and engage universities. Forge professional alliances with bodies that are governing St. Lawrence, the Danube, the Rhine, and the Zambezi. I can give you some guidance, some addresses, and some websites to do that. You need to build scenarios. As there has been separation, how to share the 18.5 cubic meters? What are your rights and benefits? You have got to identify that in a paper. What of Bahr al-Ghazal Basin? What of Subat Basin? And the prospects for agriculture and hydro. Who are the partners and who are the allies? This is only to get ready. My recommendations, South Sudan needs to start the debate. Where will South Sudan fit in the Nile Basin Initiative? Before that, you need to educate ourselves about what is the Nile Basin Initiative. Prepare to have policy on how to deal with the Sud waters. Sell it, keep the rights, trade rights for benefits, do nothing for now. That's up to the legislature and the government of South Sudan, but they should not betray the people. Stop dredging, definitely, stop dredging now. This is not the time. Nature and ecosystem never give anything for free. You take something, you lose something. What is the price of dredging? The Nile hydropolitics are not an issue for politicians to play with. It is an issue of national security. One time, President Mubarak went to the meeting of the Nile Basin eastern flank. He took with him the Minister of Defense. The Minister of Defense with the Minister of Water, he took the Minister of Defense to say, hey, if you mess around with our share of water, the Minister of Defense is there. We are going to use the military arm. That's how, although it was crude, but I really admired him for doing that for the interest of his country. We need to do something different. The Nile waters are not an issue for the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation alone. It is part of the natural resources of South Sudan, may be the biggest and most durable. Friendly nations looking for the long-term welfare of South Sudan need to help out. Contact the British Embassy, contact the Canadian Embassy, contact the Dutch Embassy because they were aware of the problem at that time. Contact the Danish Embassy, and we go forward. But for heaven's sake, nobody should touch Bahr al-Ghazal Basin or Sudan Basin, and certainly not Jonglei Canal at this time. I would advise you to form an all-party parliamentary committee for water resources, environment, and ecology in the parliament, the two houses, an all-party joint. If there is a committee of that nature, I would like to get in touch with them and help them. But this is just a suggestion. You can call it all-party parliamentary, means Senate and House of Commons, Parliamentary Committee on Water Resources, Environment, and Ecology, because they are all linked together. Appoint a knowledgeable legal advisor to the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. But he needs to be accountable to the Minister of Local Affairs, not the Minister of Water Resources. So he's a supervisor. He's there for checks and balances. Bring in Minister Michael McQuay, because I dealt with him before and I gave him all the Nile agreements. I don't know if he's still keeping them or not. You need to study well the UN Convention on the Law of the Non-Navigational Uses of International Waters. This is called the 1997 Agreement. It's very important for you. Cross-boundary rivers. Most importantly for you is the Vienna Convention on Succession of States in respect of treaties. This was signed on the 23rd of August 78. It entered into effect in 1996. This is a must for all of you. The reason is it deals with the cases of countries like South Sudan who were part of one political entity, and then they succeed. They became independent. So what happens to the treaties that were signed? This is what agreement is all about, and this is typical for your case. So you need to dig out this convention and study it well. You need to seek funding, probably $100,000, not much, to do both resource evaluation and update and modernize and complete a water policy document for 10, 15, 20 years. Look forward. So you need a professional setup. You need a team of experts in various expertise, and you need good funding so that they have a full study plan and trajectory for you for the future. This will take a professional team probably about 2 years. Do you remember that machine? This is called the Rupel. This is what CCI, Company Construction International, brought to dig the canal. And this was one of the first targets of the SPLM, SPA, and Dr. John Garang to disable the machine. Single-handed, he's the only one who could see the danger, and he attacked the machine and he disabled it. Most of it is now spears and arrows heads used by the normal people, and I hope that it stays there as a reminder that the crime that would have been committed, and the heroic role, the nationalistic role that Dr. John Garang played in disabling that machine. Thank you very much for listening, and we can go into Q&A now. The floor is back to Brother Joshua. Thank you. Please raise. Anybody with any question? Anybody with question may come in front so that he can hear him well. Are you hearing us, Dr. Taj? Yes, I am with you. تعالي دقيقة لو سمحتي.
Thank you very much, Engineer Taj.
You're welcome.
For this very informative, educative, and enlightening lecture. I'm Coach Mayol.
Yes, I'm with you.
I'm Coach Mayol, former Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning, National Government, and currently member of the Revitalized Transitional National Assembly. Engineer, you have done a very wonderful lecture that for me as a person, you have solved my worries about this issue of dredging and the digging of the canal. I come from Baragazal, Gogreal district, Tweed area in particular. River Lol runs through my area. It comes from west to east until it reaches Baragazal. We have been yearning all along for something that we didn't know that it was going to harm us. I'm one of the people, because I'm representative of the people in my area, where we were questioning the government. Because if you visit my area, Nile River is not like before. The Nile River has become very shallow. It is full of mud. So we're thinking that if it is dredged, such that it becomes deep and deeper again, it will help us. But with this lecture now, it was a wrong assumption. The concern now is there are two issues we need to address. One is the legal issue. The legal issue, I mean, emanates from the 1929 water agreement between the colonial Egypt, and then from 1959 between Sudan and Egypt, and also 1929 Egypt and Sudan, whereby South Sudan by then were part of Sudan. Now we became an independent country. My question is, what is our right now at this moment, whereby that agreement is still binding and we are not part any longer of that agreement? Where do we get our right now? Number two, as you said, the water of the Nile benefits us a lot, especially the people of the Republic of South Sudan. And you have convinced me. You said flooding is not a curse. And our people have been flooded by water all along, if not 1,000 years. But I believe when flood comes, it comes with benefits. It gives us water, it gives us grass for grazing, and everything, we get it from there. So now I have to convince myself as the member of parliament that it is time now for us. If our people could object the digging of Jonglei Canal in 1974, whereby the level of education in South Sudan was not like this time around. Is it now difficult for us at this level, whereby we have got people who have got PhDs in this field of water, leave alone the other field? I'll pick it as a member of parliament and I will fight for my right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You raised a good number of issues. Let me first start by River Lul. You don't dredge without a study. The first question is, if I dredge, will the discharge, because this is what you want to discharge, you want volume, you want quantity of water. So there is a way of studying to know if I dredge, will the discharge increase? Or will the water just go down 4 or 5 feet, but the same quantity? So you need to have a feasibility study, a technical feasibility study by experts to map River Lul and to decide if dredging will increase the discharge. It can increase the discharge if there is water that is not pooling into the main run. Then if you dredge, yes, you would lower the level and the water will come in. If no, that's not the case, then dredging is not going to help you. On the contrary, it will just make the water deeper. In that area, if you want to dredge, the first step, the legal framework is important, but the technical framework is the starting point. You need to conduct the study first, and within the study, any competent expert will factor in the legal part. According to the 1959 agreement, the 1929 agreement is not really that dangerous because it was built around Sinnar Dam. But the 1959 agreement that was signed with Aboud regime and Jamal Abdel Nasser was the main killer. And it does not leave any water for anyone. But when you talk about the legality, when those agreements were signed, there was one country, now you have separated, which takes me to your second question. If you want to know what are your rights to do with the floods, what are your, if you are to dig the canal or not, you need to go back to the Vienna Agreement that I told you about before, because this is the agreement. It has entered into force now, so it is a law. It's an international, it's part of the international law, and it puts a certain responsibility on countries that have separated to honor the existing agreement before separation. So there is a trap there, but for every trap, there is a way to go around it. If you take the Lul as a study case, that's fine. I hope the government will take that. If you want to have a general rule, where do we, all South Sudan, or 11, 12 million people and all our, where do we stand vis-a-vis international law? That's a study, that's a comprehensive study on its own. Probably, I don't know, 15, 20, $25,000, a couple of consultants, one on the legal part, one on the hydrology part, and you can have a document. You need to go by documents. Wherever you go, the Egyptians will challenge you. If you try to dig, dredge, use any water, the Egyptians will come at you with the 1959 agreement and the 1978 Vienna agreement. I'm saying, no, you cannot do that, because when you are part of Sudan, this agreement was signed. It is binding on you. The agreement is weak. The agreement is weak because it took quite a while for it to be ratified, and you can argue, there are legal arguments against it. So the legal framework, if you go back to my recommendations, I would recommend that you start in-house. You start by the two houses, form a committee just to deal with that, and all parties, so that you do not, because it's a national issue. If it is Taban Deng or Salva Kiir or Riek Machar, it makes no difference. It's not General Gachwek, everybody is in this. So make establish an all-party committee, and we can take it from there. Thank you very much. I hope that this was helpful. Next question, please.
Thank you, Dr. Taj.
You're welcome.
My name is Gadwich Lampoch. I'm a member of parliament representing Mercer County, which is also along the Sobat River. So sorry that I came late. I did not catch up with the beginning of the presentation, but I can say that this presentation is actually timely for us as a member of the parliament. In the past, I was a chairperson of energy and mining in the parliament, and also I come across these issues of construction of dams. The two dams was proposed by Sudan before, when we were a subnational, that is the full and bedded, but they were supposed to be constructed, and there were some other international bodies who were ready to contribute, but South Sudan did not manage to pay its own share. So, and then now the crisis has started. So now I'm also a sitting member in the Standing and Specialized Committee of Environment and Forestry. So I said it is timely because some time back or last week, we received a letter from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, responding to a letter sent to them by the Minister of Water, Resource and Irrigation, informing that now the ministry has received machines, dredging machines from Egypt. And now they are now embarking on dredging the Bar Ghazal's rivers who are there, and also construction of the land or resumption of the Jonglei Canal's construction. So as a committee, when upon receiving that, we respond to it as part of our oversight roles in the parliament, and we summoned the Minister of Water, Resource and Environment and Irrigation. So he's going to come to the parliament tomorrow at 10 to answer some of the questions that we have put forward to him as a ministry from the environmental perspective. So, and the impact of dredging and also the excavations of Jonglei canals on the peoples and the livestock and all the ecosystems in the area. So he's going to present to us tomorrow and then explain to us. And we also invited some relevant committee in the parliament, the livestock and fisheries, the petroleum, the water resource and irrigation, and other relevant committee who have connection with the environment and also with the natural resource in the air. So we invite them, they are coming tomorrow. So now, as I said before, I missed some part of the presentation. Let me start with Jonglei Canal. The issue of Jonglei Canal, with the history that we know, which started in 1904 and then coming to 1972, and also 1974, then 1978. 1978, I was already in second year in the secondary school, Malakal secondary schools. And we were very young and energetic at that time, but aware of what is happening in South Sudan. So with little knowledge that we have, we were actually mobilized by our senior colleagues in the school, because Nimeri by that time took a decision that three orders that he had made, that the borders should be also demarcated and annexed unity state to Sudan or to Northern Sudan after discovery of oils. Number two is also the excavation of Jonglei Canal. Number three was the construction of refinery in Kosti. So with that three issues, we demonstrated, I remember in Malakal, and we were protest against the construction of Jonglei Canal particularly. And again, also, I think one of the reasons which also led to the rebellions in 1983, Jonglei Canal also was a factor of rebellions and one of the reasons of the rebellion. And that's why in 1984, it was targeted by the SPLM to be destroyed and to destroy that machine, proper machine. So this is what has happened. And I think the current minister of water, resource and irrigation, by then I think he's a child. He's still a child. And he may not be informed about that situation. He will be, maybe he's also born in the middle of 70s. So he's not aware of that history. But it's also, there's a need for him to study and read the history so that you can also address the current issues. So with that, the Jonglei extraction, we did a lot of reading. It's going to affect the ecosystems. Also, it will reduce also the fisheries that we have, but also it will affect the livestock, and also will reduce the level of rainfalls in the area, and also it will create a lot of environmental impacts on it, because the Sud wetlands is one of the best sudland or wetlands in the region. So now, with constructions of Jonglei Canal, to us, I think it's advantage more than advantaging us as a South Sudanese. So for us, we don't see it as a priority. I agree with you that why hurry now? And I know Egyptian because I already studied in Egypt and I studied also science in Egypt, and I know the attitude of Egypt, of how when it is something that for their interest. So now, the ministry made a presentation in the Council of Ministers, but focused mostly on positive part, which is not actually benefiting South Sudanese. Because even the agreement that was signed in 1904 or even 1959, the Jonglei Canal construction is benefiting Egypt and Sudan more, and there's no any benefit for South Sudan. So we need more information about this, so that we address the issue correctly. Another issue, as I said, I'm from Nasser, and Nasser, as you know, is along Sobat River. Sobat River is sometimes sandy and muddy at the same time. So now, we are hearing that sometimes back, even before the crisis, or even before the independence of South Sudan, that they want to drag, because they have also a station in Nasser, I remember. They have a station in Nasser where they can also measure the water in Sobat River. So if they decided to dredge not a Sobat River, what will be the impact, particularly the environmental impact on the area? Will it cause also shortage of water, because we have a lot of tributes, but we have also during the dry season at this time as we speak, if you go to surrounding or periphery of Nasser, you will find that there's a lot of areas that are completely dry. And I remember in 2011, I have to work hard to see that there are some boreholes that are installed in the area, so that to address the issue of water. So now, with dredging of this water, I know it will increase the flow of water, but we need you also to shed light on that. We say that it was not included, but we need one you to shed light on this. So these are the issues that I want to bring to your attention, and also we need more clarification on it.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There is quite a lot there. Let me start on a personal note. The late Peter Jatkot was a friend of mine. He's the father of the current minister. And there were only two people by his bedside when he died in England. It was Bona Malwal and myself. And the World Bank hired me as advisor to Brother Coleman Young and Manawa Peter Jatkot. I was in Bor as senior consultant on water and irrigation issues, people demands issues, on and off for about 18 months, quite a long period. So I am aware of the background. As you know, the Egyptians had like a small colony in Malakal, Royal Masri. They had a gauge and a station in Mangala. The traces of it were there until probably 2010. I am not sure if it is still there. And then, as you said, it is in Nasir as well. There is always a starting question that you may ask Manawa. Why do you want to dredge? Why do you want to dredge? What is the value added for the people of South Sudan? Because if the value added for the people of South Sudan is not the guiding principle, then Munawar, everybody else is missing the point. You don't do work in your own country simply because the Egyptians gave you machinery. Why did they give the machinery? What is in it for the Egyptians? Now, there are normally, when you have any project, there are 4 impact assessments that must be done. Without them, it is just introductions like this one. The first one is the environmental impact assessment. This is a study. It has a structure. It is a solid structure. The template, any junior consultant can actually go through the template. So what the parliament or the joint committee needs to do upfront or instruct the minister to do upfront is an environmental impact assessment. The second one is the PCIA, Peace and Conflict Impact Assessment. What will happen to the communities around the facility if we do the project? Will it impact negatively on the peace and conflict? Are there any unseen, unintended negative impacts that will come out of that? So the PCIA, the Peace and Conflict Impact Assessment, is another assessment that has got to be done. The third template that is available is the Health Impact Assessment. What will be the impact on the health of the people? And the last one, which is very important for the pastoralists, is the Economic Impact Assessment. Right now, our folks from the Nuer and the Dinka and other tribes have a movement east and west, and they also have a movement north and south. During April, May, they come to the Toj because there is water and grass there. When the water recedes, the grass comes out. That will be gone. That will definitely be gone. So the interest of those people, what will happen to the people all around the said area, all the peripheries, there is a Toj. What is going to happen for the pastoralists when the water is drained? Also, if I were sitting with you, I will ask Manawa and probably his undersecretary who should come with him. A lot of the good people have left. The capacity, the institutional capacity, and the knowledge capacity in the ministry right now is extremely low because a lot of people have left, and I know them all. Besides advising Manawa when he was in Bor with Coleman Young and Hussein Mar, I was actually advising Isaac Liabwell when he was undersecretary for a full year, paid by the World Bank. We did a lot of good work. There were lots of mistakes from the ministry side, from the politicians, but at least we managed to create awareness about the need for research. So for the honorable brother, I think we will, if I were sitting with you, I will ask Munawa to do for us an environmental impact assessment, not to give us a verbal account. No. No. It has got to be a scientific environmental impact assessment. Munawa wouldn't have a clue about what the environmental impact is. He's not an engineer. He did not do the study. So he cannot come and talk. This is not an issue for talk. It is not an issue for defending a decision. The fact that the Egyptians gave the equipment, they want to stand back. It is not us who are dredging. It is the government of South Sudan that is dredging. It's a trap. You need to be extremely careful. I aborted the first attempt of dredging the Siu and the Busari and part of the Jur. And at that time, when I was giving a presentation, someone said, Engineer Taj, you are dredging, you are not draining. And of course, this is very stupid because once you dredge, you drain. When you dredge, the water will come in and it will go into the main channel of the river. So if I were sitting with you, I would question Bonawa and his undersecretary, why did the Egyptians give you this equipment? Why did you take it? And above all, where are the studies? The impact studies, all the impacts, economic, environmental, health, social impact. And I would differentiate between the environment and the ecology. You need to be careful about that. A lot of people are living on the fish which is in the sea. And probably this could be a project for the future to have a commercial enterprise out of the massive quantities of fish. The limitation is the water hyacinths. What do we do with the water hyacinths? So tomorrow, I would suggest that you prepare a set of questions for Manawa and his undersecretary. And if I were you, I would ask him to bring the undersecretary with him because he's supposed to be the technical person. I will ask him for a credible environmental impact assessment, for a credible peace and conflict impact assessment, for a credible health impact assessment, and for a credible economic impact assessment. What is in it for our people? If there is nothing in it, it should be scrapped. If the equipment has arrived, it should be turned back. This is the time when you can stop the Egyptians from taking the people of South Sudan for a ride. And I wish to reiterate my previous very harsh statement that anybody who messes around with the Nile Basin issues in South Sudan is really committing high treason. Thank you, brother.
Hello, Professor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Very well. Thank you very much.
Yes, I have a question. And
Sure.
perhaps just a few remarks.
Sure.
My name is Deng Majuk Cho. I am a DPhil candidate at the University of Oxford, and my research study is on the Sud wetland of South Sudan, and especially the role of climate change and variability. I'm working with a group from University of Oxford, Harvard University, MIT, and University of Colorado. And what we are working on is hydrological modeling of the Sud, as well as the entire Upper Nile basin. We are using, because currently there's a lack of flat scale hydrometeorological model, and we are adapting that to use. This will provide insight for infrastructure planning if need be, and government to develop climate resilience development plans. I want to echo some of your recommendations. First of all, I appreciate you recognizing that South Sudan is absolutely blessed in terms of water. It's better that we seem to have more water than no water at this point, because we, as you mentioned earlier, that flooding is not river. And it might be flooding today in Upper Nile, but it could be drought tomorrow. And I think we cannot overstate the impact of climate change and variability. And because of all of these uncertainties, I am part of the study, both for my DPhil as well as for this group that is looking at long range from today to the next 50 years and to the next 100 years to the end of century modeling. Because until we know exactly how the Sud basin is going to behave in terms of hydrological changes, will we continue to have the amount of water we have today or not? Until we know this, otherwise it will be very, very, very difficult to try to intervene using large scale infrastructure without knowing such impact. It will also create what you call earlier unintended consequences and what some of the hydrologists call maladaptation. When you come up with such a major solution and you have not used a simulation, there's no hydrological simulation or temperature simulation, no studies that have been done, be it environmental, hydrological, or what have you. And then you come up with a major infrastructure. Then you risk creating an environment that will lead to maladaptation, something you cannot fix down the road, because such intended consequences cannot be reversed and they can be regretted forever. And so I just want to echo that your call for more studies and your call for any scientific study related to any infrastructure, be it dredging or be it dam or be it any kinds of infrastructure is in place. And I am sure all the people who are listening to you online, as well as those in the have been brought together by Honorable Joshua Dow, are listening to you very well. You are an expert who have worked in this area for many years, and you have also academic background. You are also from the Sudan and have known the Sudan and Egypt for quite a long time. I think the debate that you are calling has already started. This debate has been ongoing for a while, but it has been at marginal level. It has been within South Sudanese diaspora and within South Sudanese in South Sudan who have interest in environment and hydrology, but it has not yet gotten into the grassroots, this debate of what needs to be done. It has not yet included the affected population to be the voices of such a debate. It has not also gotten into official of government of South Sudan, relevant official, so that this debate need to include every aspect of our society if we are to come up with any solution to the future. Perhaps I would end with a couple of questions for you. I had initially proposed a number of solutions with a letter. It's not quite a letter, but more of a response and a memo to Honorable Manawa. And it was written not long ago, a few weeks ago. And in that response to both Honorable Taban Dengai, the Vice President on Infrastructure Cluster, and to Peter Manawa, I had in that response cautioned them and for them to prioritize research before solution. And I had proposed a number of solutions, and some of those solutions tend to be in line with what you have recommended, but some of them are slightly different. You have talked about the soil, the kind of soil we have in South Sudan, and especially around the Sobat, as being black clay soil, and that such kind of soil may not support the digging of, say, of a dam. And if South Sudan want to have a dam on the Baro, Pijbor, or a Koba river subsystem, then they will have to do it with Ethiopia as a joint project. I understand the characteristic of the soil and the technical difficulties it could impose. But there, in my proposal, I'm proposing a artificial lake. Artificial lake on the eastern side. This is between Pijbor and those between Pijbor in the Murule, and also the Nuer in Ayud, let's say, and then the Dinkas on the Jonglei side, an artificial lake. I wanted to hear your thought in terms, this is again, need to be preceded with scientific study. But I would like to get your take on the issue of soil as it relates to artificial lake. And the same thing with another proposal I have on the Bahar Kazal River, shortly before the Bahar Kazal wetland, where the Pango River and the Jur and the other rivers come together to form confluent. And there is, especially around rainy season, there is a tremendous flow of water there. So I'm also proposing theoretically, and again pending research, that there could also be perhaps artificial lake to regulate the flow of water during the wet season, and to also provide water, as you said before, cattle full of water. They don't follow people. So I am designing this in this theoretical framework, that such artificial lake can serve a number of purposes. It can also provide water and modulate the flow of the river and control flooding during the high of the river. So I wanted your take on those two artificial lakes between the, on the triangular area of the Murule to the east, the Nuer to the north, and Samdinga to the north, and then Samdingas to the west, to sort of create water for agriculture, as well as, and these artificial lakes are not taking water from the river Nile system. It is capturing water from the Buma highland, runoff, very much from the runoff. It's like harvesting water from the rain. It's not connecting to the Nile, and it's not taking away any water. There's no legal implication that I see with that. So anyway, I wanted your input on that. But on the whole, I really appreciate your generosity in sharing this, and also your conviction in maintaining that South Sudan as a sovereign nation need to have a priority, its own priority, and need to identify its rights and its benefits. And it also need to involve its population. South Sudan peoples have not participated in all of this all along. And it is time for them to begin that dialogue that is inclusive and that would allow all the segment of the population, including the affected population, in any study. And this is what my study intends to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. You made a complimentary or a presentation that complements what I said. You laid it out very well. You are taking a scientific approach to the issue, which we should all do. There is the UNESCO designates national heritage sites around the world, and they have a section where they have a channel where they designate wetlands as heritage. I would strongly advise the parliament and the government of South Sudan to apply to the UNESCO to designate the Sud as a national heritage. That way, you get quite a bit of protection under international law. That's the first one. The second one, which you alluded to, and that's climate change. And I gave the example of Lake Chad. If you look at an aerial view of Lake Chad in 1964, you will get the size of the lake as taken from above. And then in 2015 or 16, Lake Chad reduced to 5% of that size. 95% was swallowed. Nobody took water out. No dams were built. It is the climate change. The desert creep 7 kilometers every year for about 10 or 15 years. The desert was creeping at the rate of 7 kilometers every year. So you are quite right. You never know. You need to build a trajectory. You need to build a forecast. The modules that you are talking about are, of course, a very good way for that. And then you talked about the unintended negative impact. This is what we call the PCIA. This was developed by a colleague of mine. That the template of how to do peace and conflict impact assessment, it is meant for the positive or negative impacts that are unintended. So both of them. And this is a template. I teach that template. And it is very easy to follow. All you need is, someone who is guiding a team of 4 or 5 people. So a peace and conflict impact assessment is definitely important. Citizens' involvement, because at the end of the day, a member of the parliament, the president, the vice president, they are all sitting in Juba and they are not sitting in the swamps. So the citizens' approach and citizens' interests are extremely important. You asked a specific question about the soil. Soil analysis is a solid and very simple testing. Whenever I built in the 130 hafirs that I designed and built in South Sudan, mostly in Greater Upper Nile, for each and every hafir, we did soil testing. For disturbed and undisturbed samples, we used to take the sample and send it to Khartoum or send it to Nairobi, and we'll get the analysis. So this is a very simple soil analysis test. If you want to build a lake, all we need to do is to do a demarcation of where we want to do it. And if it is a large area, we can probably take 20, 25, 30 disturbed and undisturbed samples. We send them to a soil analysis lab and we'll get the result. Now, if the soil is porous in the designated location, it's not the end of the world, because we can have polyethylene sheets underneath and then the water will not seep through the sand. So there are remedies. The primary objective will be who will benefit from this lake? What is the size? What is the purpose? What is the best surface position? And then we go down. We go into the soil, we take the samples, and we decide. Sometimes you have a clay deposit at the top, then you have sand, then you have clay deposit again. Or you can have rocks if you dig deeper. We will never know unless we actually dig and do soil analysis. It's not expensive. All we need is what we call a rig, drill rig, and it can be a mobile one. A second-hand rig is probably $20,000. So the ministry can actually buy one and do any soil analysis that's needed to be done. Of course, as you know, there is a big difference between artificial lakes and a dam. The reason why I am suggesting that South Sudan cooperates more with Ethiopia than with Sudan and Egypt is that your next door neighbor in Ethiopia, going to the south, from Buma going south until Moyale in Ethiopia, that's SWMPR, Southern Nation Nationalities and Peoples Region. 13 million people. And it is not really very productive within the Ethiopian economy. So I would expect that Ethiopia will be very soft, very cooperative. If you want to do anything in Baro River, Pibor River, which form the Sobat, and there can be a kind of sharing. That area, SWMPR, is not heavily populated. I lived there for 4 months under the USAID program. So the population is not large. The central government in Ethiopia does not really care that much. And there are hardly any development projects there. So a sharing agreement of the 12 billion cubic meters, if you build a dam properly, you can actually have the use of 12 billion cubic meters of water. So your idea of building artificial lakes is good. However, with artificial lakes, you want to be careful about evaporation, especially during the dry months. The way you counter excessive evaporation is by going deep, because evaporation is a direct function of the surface area. If you have a small surface area, the evaporation is small. If you have a large, only 1 meter deep, you will have a lot of evaporation and you lose the water. So, as you said rightly, it needs a study. I lived for a good time of my life in Greater Upper Nile in the Eastern Bank. And I consider myself a citizen of UI in Urur County. I was there for 3 months, uninterrupted, working on Hafirs and analyzing the mistakes that were done in other. I must have surveyed 30 Hafirs in that vicinity, between Nakrumai North and then going down. There is a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. I recommended to the World Bank years back the issue of research. Research without funding is meaningless. If you want to do research, you need to have funding. Research with funding, without expertise, you are not going to go very far. So if you want to do research, you need to have funds, you need to have experts who will do the research. You need to have a listening government, because sometimes people think that you are just putting out wild theories. Nobody cares. So the receiving side, which is the executive part of the government in South Sudan, if we're talking about legislative and executive, they need to understand that there is value in research, and that when there is a research done and there are recommendations, they have got to take them seriously. What I will do, together with brother Joshua and our son Paul, I will send you my emails. I will send you the consulting one, and I will send you the university one. Let us communicate. We may be able to help. There may be some little funding, $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 from the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives. This is a program by the Canadian government. We can talk about that, and we can see if they have got the fund this year, and if you are eligible to apply and get some funding to carry your research forward. I hope that was useful. Thank you very much.
It was. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Professor.
Yes, sir.
The moderator is suggesting that why don't we give the chances first to the attendants, the MPs first, and once they finish their question, we move to the other participants who are joining you from elsewhere.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, the moderator, Brother Joshua, will decide that. I have no problem.
So that's what he has already decided.
That's what we are suggesting, and also we are requesting our members to shorten their questions and their comments.
Yeah, I want to say something before you go to people to ask their questions.
Yeah.
And if the people are willing, I have allowed for an extra half an hour. So I timed the meeting and I put half an hour at the end. So if we go over 10, 15 minutes, I am fine with that, as long as the people are fine with it.
Okay. What I'm saying is to ourselves, the time that was allocated for this thing is up. 2, it will be good for us to stop from here and we call another meeting of ourselves and we digest what has been presented to us, and from there we inform question that some can go to the Minister of Water, some can go to whatever part of the government, and then we consider ourselves into something like a think tank. But we're talking morally like here and we disperse.
We cannot hear those in the room. If someone is talking, they should come forward closer to the microphone so that professor can hear them well.
That one we will handle it. We will call all of you. I have your list, and we will have not some other time to come and discuss what we have received from Dr. Chad. But for the time being, we have Honorable.
We start with the seat of the Minister of Environment.
Okay. I wanted to give the chance to the members of Parliament first, because I started this thing and we're following from that. And I would just want to say what we the Minister of Environment.
Yeah, I'm Kola Temgarang. I'm a member of Parliament and a member of the Environmental Committee in the National Assembly. I would like to thank you, Dr. Taj, for sharing with us this rich knowledge of yours. And I'm happy that what I was thinking in my mind, you have actually expressed it more than what I could have said. I have been writing about Jonglei Canal, but in Arabic, because I want to send a message to Egyptians that we know what Jonglei Canal means to us. It was a colonial project, and it's still up to today, it is a colonial project in its aims and intention. And therefore, it's not a national project. And if we want to turn it to a national project, then we'll have a different canal, not Jonglei Canal. Number 2, mine is very simple. It's about the dredging of the river. As you know, from 1900, the British Authority, and after that, the Sudanese Authority, they have been dredging the rivers but for only one reason. It was for navigation. And they were moving only two substances. One was the floating vegetation, which used to block rivers. And you know, this is why they call the area set, because it's when it is floating and it becomes very huge, it blocks the rivers, and then they have to remove it. Number two was the sandy parts of the river, because every year when there is flood like this year, there will be areas which were deep, now they will become shallow, and then the boats, which was coming from Kosi to Juba, will not be able to. But what was not done, and I think this is what the Egyptians want to do this time, because they think people in South Sudan are not that intelligent. They want to tighten some parts of the river. And they want to make the river, some parts, be very deep, which have never been the part of the dredging of the river since 1900. So mine is just, you can explain to us, the dredging for navigation, is it also can be harmful to us because it has been done since 1900? And the example is the river, one of the rivers which is in my area called Atem, where I got my name. That river is now blocked by reeds, by papyrus, and all the type of vegetation. It used to have running water. Now water doesn't run there. So is it really harmful if you dredge it, you remove the vegetation, but don't touch the bottom of the river? This is what I want to know, because I have been even trying to reach Egyptians when I was in Sudan in 2007 to get us some machine to come and make a dredging to the river for navigation, but not for it. But they might have designed something which our people may not understand it, that they want more water. But we want just only to make dredging for navigation. We want to navigate the river up to Wau, want to navigate the river up to Pibor, up to Akobo, want to navigate the river up to Joko, as it used to be. We want to navigate the river up to Juba, because now between Juba and Mangala, you cannot use huge barrages because it has become sandy. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Sure. Thank you very much for bringing those points. You know, the history of Jungule Canal is not all that brilliant. If you remember the late Dr. Gama Hassan is a Mahdi, and he was the commissioner for Jungule Canal project based in Khartoum. So there was a commission during Numeri's time, and a Southern Sudanese was put at the head of that commission. All this was Egyptian engineering. Just a point, as you have an all-party committee on environment and forestry, I would strongly suggest that you add water to it. Water before the environment, water before the forestry, because if you don't have water, you don't have forest. So I will strongly suggest that within the two houses, you add water so that you have an explicit responsibility for the water. Let us come to what we call surface dredging. The water hyacinth was brought by an Englishman and was it is not an indigene of the White Nile. And he put that water hyacinth in Lake Victoria. He just floated it and it multiplied until we have the problem now. Water hyacinth is actually an enemy of the Nile. The reason is when you have the water hyacinth, you have all these leaves and it increases the evaluation by about 100%. So wherever you have water hyacinth, other than the blockage, you have very high evaporation. Dredging the Nile, collecting the water hyacinth does not affect whatsoever the flow of it. Improves the flow of the water, but you have the water hyacinth on top and you have the water underneath. It is a surface plant. The roots do not go into the soil. So it is a surface thing. Once you take it, that's it. You actually reduce the evaporation. Dredging, if you remember the slide that I showed you, where I showed the levels above sea level of the Nile and then around Malakal, before and around Malakal, there is that dip, and this is where we have the Sud. If you are dredging there, there is no harm whatsoever. If you are dredging short distances, even if it improves the flow, it is not that much. But don't go very deep so that you do not disturb the natural flow. This will need a study from Nimuli to Malut. What is the profile of the Nile now? Where are these areas? And any brilliant engineer can tell you, if you dredge in that area, the consequences on the discharge is going to be this much in such a location. We can predict that. So what we need is, if you want to do any dredging for navigational purposes, for fishing purposes, because now if you talk to your folks, the boats can actually, the fishermen can do limited work because of the water hyacinths, because there is sand and mud somewhere. If you remove that, you need to remove it based on a study, knowing exactly what you are doing. Where are you putting the dredged soil that you are going to take out? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. My name is Helen Dukunyanglado, a current chairperson for Environment and Forestry Committee in the National Legislative Assembly. I came late and I think I missed out on most of the important points, but I'm happy that I caught up with what interests me most about the Jonglei Canal. You mentioned earlier that South Sudan does not need canal, it needs dikes. Yes, I do agree with that. But then there is a question about those areas that have been experiencing droughts throughout the year. And those areas have got shallow rivers, talk of Bibor and Akobo. During the dry seasons, those rivers are totally dry. And these communities are pastoralists and they are forced to move out from the original places to look for water somewhere else. And the water points actually become the source of conflicts between those communities like the Nuer and the Murle. Does that mean we cannot also canalize the Sud wetlands to those dry areas to supply water for those communities living in those areas that I've mentioned, like Bibor and Akobo?
Right. The problem with Jonglei Plains is that the level above sea level, the height above sea level of all Jonglei Plains varies within 2 to 4 meters. So you don't have enough gradient to create massive runoff and store the water. If you go to Jonglei by helicopter during the rainy season, you will find that the water is everywhere, because there are no runoffs. These seasonal rivers, you can create sand dams. Well, you just block the river and then you have sand, and then you dig a well to take the water from the sand and for the underground water from the sand. That's one way of doing it. So there are ways. However, whenever you have a seasonal river, you need to study up front. If I dredge this river, will I change the course? Yes or no? It depends on the study. Will I increase the water discharge? Yes or no? It depends on the study. Is that temporary or permanent? Yes or no? That needs to come into the study. So at the end of the day, it really all comes through the soil analysis, through the hydrology. And today you can actually commission having aerial photographs, aerial resounding for as little as $5,000 for an area. So this is the area reconnaissance as well as the ground reconnaissance will determine the answer to your questions. The seasonal rivers, the people are intelligent. And if you are talking about the eastern flank of the Nile, the Nuers, the Dinkas, the Morle, the Nangatoms, if you are talking about those people down there, this is pastoralist area. And the need is really for more hafirs rather than working on the rivers. It is less expensive. It is targeted, because what happened in northern Uganda was catastrophic when they made permanent places for pastoralists, and they overgrazed the place we used to call it the tennis courts. They changed the grasslands into tennis courts. Nothing was growing. So you don't want to overgraze the area as well. And the pastoralism is an integrated system. It is not just people carrying. I lived among them and I have a lot of respect for them. So if you are talking about the Jungule Plains, probably hafirs to store the water, but what we call hafirs in series. Because as the cattle is moving, they need to drink every day or sometimes twice a day. So if they go 10 kilometers, they want to stop and you want to have a hafir. The pastoralists follow two things in life. They follow the water and they follow the grass. The grass is stagnant. You can play with the water, don't play with the grass. There is nothing you can do about it. The grass is stagnant. But the water, you can store it. So if you are talking about our people, Morley going up to New Year's and then the enclave of the Denkas close to the Nile, right there, probably hafirs in series is a better solution. The seasonal rivers, we need to have a study. We need to identify those rivers. We can do what we call a pre-feasibility. If I can get 2 or 3 young engineers from the ministry, I am willing to coach them. I don't want to be paid. That's not an issue for me. I can coach them to do a pre-feasibility on these seasonal rivers on the eastern bank. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm going to now say okay, thank you. The default, is it working? Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
My name is Joseph Africano Batel, and I'm the Undersecretary, the Minister of Environment and Forestry. All what is happening now emanated from our ministry, because of late, there were some events between the Ministry of Water Resources and the President, the Office of the Vice President for Infrastructure Cluster. The new ambassador of Egypt came to South Sudan, and the first person that he met was the Vice President. And the first thing that he requested was the resumption of the Jongole Canal. And secondly, because of the flooding that is happening in about 5 of our states, the UNCT decided to meet with the Vice President for Infrastructure Cluster, and there was a joint meeting between government and the UN. So the floods have been used as a reason for the resumption of the Jongole Canal.
Goodness gracious.
So during the meeting we had with the UN, the VP went ahead and assigned the Bahr el Ghazal River and Bahr el Naam, and he said he's already given it to the Egyptians to dredge it. So I took the opportunity when there was a Q&A, and I raised the issue of conducting environmental and social impact assessment before conducting any dredging in those rivers.
Yeah.
So what happened was a committee was formed, chaired by the executive director for the Road Authority. I'm part of that committee. Then the secretary for water resources was also part of that committee, and some people for us now to try to look into that. But as an undersecretary for environment, I won't be able to be in any of the committees, because what Minister of Environment, what we like to see is the conduct of an environmental and social impact assessment by a third party, vetted by us. Then the report is handed to us. We review it and we see the management plans, the mitigation management plans. And if everything is okay with us, we give a no objection letter for that project to proceed. So the next thing that happened, which I dodged again, was a presentation for a Jongole Canal Development Project document. And to the best of my knowledge, and with the capacity of our staff in the Ministry of Water Resources, that document has not originated from us. It is an Egyptian document.
Correct. Correct.
So what happened, I was asked to go and attend that meeting. And again, I decided not to go and attend it. And automatically, the rest of the people endorsed that project and wanted it to be submitted, to be tabled to the Council of Ministers, where it has to be given a go-ahead. So when you see that document, you will see nice roads and nice bridges, lights here and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it is not something that we as a government have a priority on the Jongole Canal. And as you said, why hurry? And why now? So from the standpoint of the Minister of Environment, I have to write to the Undersecretary of Water Resources and brought all those issues up. And I'm glad, and I'll thank all the members of Parliament here, especially the head, the chairperson of the Environment and Forestry Committee, for summoning the minister to answer those questions. And what you have done, and with your presentation, it augments our position as Minister of Environment to make sure that before conducting any developmental project in the country, we are not in 1904, we are in 2020. And we have gone to the schools that most everybody has gone to. And we really understand what is supposed to be done before just anybody takes us for a ride. We know the ecosystem services of we know the ecosystem services that the Sud wetland is providing. You mentioned rightly that Western Equatoria is there because of the Sud, but I can still extend that even the Congo forest is there because of the Sud. And one thing that I would like to bring to your attention is we in the ministry made sure that the Sud wetland is now a Ramsar site. It is a wetland of international importance. And at the same time, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Besides everything that's happening, if we are going to do something, we need to bring in the Ramsar Convention, where the convention protects the place.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to conclude now is it's now in the hands of the legislators. And tomorrow, I think the questions that they will ask will determine, and the positions that they take will determine the future of the Sud and the future of South Sudan. Thank you.
Number one, let me raise my hat for you for your courage, and raise my hat for you for your patriotic approach to issues and having the interest of South Sudan at heart and standing up for what is right. My hats off. I didn't know that you were aware of a number of things. I was not aware that the wetlands of the Sud are part of the UNESCO International Heritage. Those are very comforting revelations.
Sure.
And I would suggest that you write to UNESCO. Someone should write to UNESCO. You can write as an individual. You can write as the parliament and alert UNESCO of what is going on, what is being planned at night when the people are asleep. That's your right. The second thing, I am recording this this event, and I will send the recording so that you can refer to it if it will be useful. And I will send the recording to Brother Joshua for keep for the future, and if we are going to have other events in the future. It is important that we bring in the executive as well. It is important that we bring in the president's office, whoever he's willing to delegate. And then probably in another separate meeting, we bring in the friendly embassies, those of Denmark, those of Norway, those of Holland, those of the UK, those of Canada, so that we have some kind of diplomatic pressure on doing things the right way. The issue of Jungule Canal, as I said, I have the document that that was developed presumably under the name of Manawa. I have that document, and I fully agree with you that it is it glossed over a lot of things and painting the picture that's not correct. I also have the original study of Jungule, and all the benefits were the bank, so that they could build roads on the banks of the original Jungule. Now the danger comes as follows. There were two scenarios, and Maulana Abil Alair was, of course, was right at the center of that during the negotiations. There was one scenario of dredging stroke draining only 4 billion cubic meters of water. And in those days, those 4 billion were going to be shared in the same proportion between Egypt and Sudan. That's recorded, that's in the documents. There was another scenario that, no, we can actually drain 10 billion cubic meters out of the 30 billion. And again, they will be shared with the same ratio as the 1959 agreement. So in the conceptual framework of Jungule, there was absolutely no water sharing that involves South Sudan. The Egyptians and the Sudanese wanted to take the water and use it, and you lose the wetlands. So I think your actions are important. If I were you, I would look into the legal framework. How can we stop people like the Ministry of Water Resources going out in a tangent and doing what they want to do without even the approval of the legislative, without conducting these studies? The danger is that with passages of water, water itself, rainwater, collection, storage, I mean, those things are not for individuals to play with. They are not for political decisions. They are for political decisions, authority decisions based on solid studies, solid information. And the basic principle is do no harm. Do no harm. Any project must not do harm to the status quo. Thank you. And if you will be kind enough and take my my email from Paul or from Brother Joshua, I will be more than willing to work with you. I will be more than willing to help. And as I said, this is not about money. If the time comes for consulting, there is international funding, that's a different story. But standing with my brothers and sisters in South Sudan, I wouldn't even dare to ask for a cup of coffee. Thank you.
Yes, let me thank our Dr. Taj. We would be happy if we can have our ambassador, Gordon Boy, to have a word and to tell us something about the occasion before we close. Thank you.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
I thank you very much, Uncle. I think Uncle Taj, we call him Uncle Taj because me and him we live together in Canada in Ottawa for a long time. Even we did a lot of things when we were communities before even the CPA was signed. He helped us a lot, and he developed us in how to approach things. So when this issue, I was the one who alerted him, as he will testify later on, because when I read the document of Manao Peter, I was so mad. I was so mad, and because Uncle Taj, for the last 5 years, we have been in contact and then discussing these issues of Nile basin, and then the politics of water and all these things. So, and also I know that he's in contact with some experts in Canada. I alerted him, and when I alerted him, he said, what are the parliamentarians saying? And then luckily at that time, Uncle Joshua wrote an article. I told him, I think you know Uncle Joshua. He said, yes, I know Uncle Joshua. I told him, yeah, I sent him the article that you wrote, and then he read it. And he told me, okay, can you connect us so that I can share my expertise with them? I said, yes, that is the body. They are members of parliament, then they are the right people for you to be in contact with. And this is how Uncle Joshua, I connected you with him. And this led to this presentation. Because when I read the document from our Minister of Water, I see it like a propaganda document. It's not scientific, because they even put some buildings there along the Nile. They are not addressing the scientific issues that should be raised. And this issue of Jonglei killed a lot of people. We know that. Me, I grew up in the bush. So for us to address and to approach national issues without scientific studies are very dangerous. So what I can say, I'm a diplomat, and my job is to connect you with the right people like Uncle Taj, and that's what I did. And the rest, you, the members of parliament, is your job. Thank you very much.
I think we are going to close.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Taj. I think you will have your last remarks, but we are grateful for the presentation, and we will continue to discuss it among ourselves, and we will involve others. And as I said in one of the messages to you, we might organize another occasion for the diplomats and our executive members in the government. But this is yet to be discussed with them. If they are ready for it, we will then pursue the possibilities of doing so. So you can give us your last remarks, and we will close the presentation. And we are really grateful for the occasion and your presentation, your deep knowledge of the situation in our country, and your closeness with our people and concern for the welfare of our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gordon is my son. He's one of my sons, and he's very loyal to his country. He keeps me informed of any developments where he thinks that I could add value. I commend him for that. I am also impressed with the level of responsibility and nationalism that has come out during this meeting. And I will conclude again that anytime you feel that I could be of help, writing a small note or doing a presentation or just going into consultations, I am willing to do that at any time. God bless you all. Thank you very much, and God bless South Sudan. Okay, bye-bye.
We will be expecting the recording with through Paul, and I'm happy that Paul will be in close touch with you, and I will also be following with you on issues of the same nature. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, you have those few of you who did not get my articles. I have 10 of them here. So if you, first of all,